The lovely um, Jocelyn, Jocelyn Cooper, is the program manager of the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition and the person I go to for advice all the time. I feel like I have been sort of trying to figure out a way to navigate these waters. Ooh, we have a person. Okay. Um, and it's sometimes hard to be your authentic self, which is why I really appreciate Paul. But sometimes it's hard to be your authentic self all the time. And I really feel like Jocelyn always makes me feel like I can be just me, the loudest me, as much as I need to be. Um, so I appreciate that. And I would just love, love, love to introduce her. She has some amazing things to say.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nate, for having me here. I appreciate your invitation and for Stripes of Solidarity, your whole team, like putting together this so necessary event and activity. It's very interesting that outside of me leading the queer support group that I lead for survivors of childhood sexual abuse, I don't think I've ever actually been invited to speak at a totally queer event. So this is a first. So thanks. Um, so, as Nate was saying, I'm the program manager for the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, and Nate is a driving force over there, getting us in line as we hear youth and queer voices and come together. I myself am queer, identify as pansexual, but I don't know how I feel about that title today because that might change tomorrow, y'all. Uh, the reality is that I've always been queer in one way or another. I'm also neurodivergent. I've always been the different one in my family. And that means that I've always kind of been tossed to the side a little bit. So I think that has been a huge contributor to my advocacy work and who I've been even when I was a little girl serving as a candy striper in Georgia Baptist Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. One of the things that I wanted to spend time talking about today um, was centered around like self-advocacy, but in a way that requires us to step up how we take care of ourselves. So I have some notes here to make sure that I don't ramble on. But the first thing that I want to highlight is the fact that this is the quote I say like often, visibility matters. We all know that. And when you sit in a space where people are always trying to silence you or make you feel different, we're othered. We don't feel like we belong. And as someone who kind of grew up like an only child because of the age gap between me and my sisters, um, naturally we know that it doesn't feel good, but you feel like you're being bullied. You feel like you're being attacked at times. And so I had this like fantasy. It was giving Disney bubble in my mind that when I became an adult, this would go away. It actually got worse. I'm sure you all can attest to that. Whether it's a healthcare space, it's a personal space, a place of worship or gathering and spirituality, I still encounter some of these things. And so grateful for communities like this where we can come together and connect. So one of the things that I often say, now that I've, located my voice in the last decade plus or whatever, and I speak up often, is that health equity means every identity, every story, every single time. Don't give me, oh, well, we're not just focused on that right now, or we're not going to talk about that right now. Absolutely not. I served before I came to RDDC. Years ago, I served as a HIV program director for like 5 years. And that is honestly the space where I feel like my health advocacy elevated at another level because I found myself literally in a fight um, with the healthcare system, but also with the people that signed my paycheck. They did not honor or respect the patients and people that we served. They did not see them beyond their diagnosis, and it pissed me off all the time. And so I would just be like, this is not just a box to check, and that's those same principles apply to the rare space. You're not just the ICD-10 code that sits in your healthcare chart. You're more than your diagnosis. And I'm so grateful for everyone that's here because I know that's one more person that'll be connected to a message about living beyond your diagnosis. So we know that being queer, queerdom has existed since the beginning of creation, whether folks like to act like it or not. The reality is we're not going anywhere. And so I encourage you to, and this is literally just dovetailing on what Paul just shared, speak through the silence. That's what I had to learn to do. As someone that experienced so many traumas for a number of different reasons growing up, I really struggled with just speaking up for myself in a way that wasn't deemed disrespectful, but that was deemed helpful in terms of advocating for myself, having conversations with people. You know, it's not always just about the system. Sometimes the system starts within our very own families, our very own local communities. And so it's hard sometimes, right? If you're a person living with a rare disease or a chronic illness, and you're saying, people are saying, well, just speak up, just tell the doctor this, or just tell so and so this. Hell, I can't tell my mama X, Y, and Z. I'm struggling to have a conversation with my dad. And so bearing the reality of it is speak through the silence from a place of frame it in a way that works for you. Everyone's not going to get on a national stage. Everyone's not going to start a podcast. Everyone's not going to host a rare and radiant briefing, but that's okay. Do it in your own way that works for you, your personality, and your community. Um, One of the things that I wanted to highlight, and Nate probably gets tired of me saying this during meetings, but I often say that you're the expert of you. Well, I started off by saying what we're not going to do is let somebody else tell you who you are. You're the expert of you. And so that requires you to get to know you, mind, body, and spirit in a different kind of way so that nobody can ever tell you who you are. This goes beyond our queer identities. It's just in terms of who are we in eternity? Who are we in inception? And who are we becoming even now? So often, you know, it's so many influences, especially now you talk about social media and all these different things adding to how we view ourselves. But perspective is everything. And so just remember that it's going to be super important for you to learn yourself, mind, body, and spirit in a way so that nobody can ever tell you how you're feeling physically, mentally, or emotionally. These are things that I'm big on because it's been a huge part of my healing journey as I discovered all aspects of like who I am and got an understanding of every single thing associated with who I am as a queer person, who I am as an advocate, who I am as a Black, you know, woman, all these different things. So intersectionality is definitely something that I want to touch on because it's so many layers. You know, I think when Kimberly Crenshaw created that concept, you know, as a health advocate and attorney, she was trying to provide context to help people understand. But sometimes, you know, it becomes a buzzword when we use it a lot, right? But it really just is that crossing over of everything, all those different layers. And so it's important for us to, when viewing the intersectionality lens, to start within. So I often have to say, and this is conversations I'm having with myself, so I share it with you today, create a safe space within. You as an individual should aim to be a safe space. And it's one of the things that we are often looking for safe spaces because we're humans, right? It's 8 billion of us. We were created to be relational beings. We want to connect with folks and belong and all of that. But you yourself first has to learn how to be a safe space within consistently. And it's challenging when you have all this external stimuli, again, telling you who you should be, what you should look like, what you should wear, what you should eat, etc. And so these are the things that help you live a more fruitful and quality life of quality. One of the things that I want to share before I like wrap up is that self-care is is also about boundary setting. So so often when we're queer, I heard Katrina say in her lovely comments a few moments ago to Paul, she said, I'm just not going to explain that anymore. That's a boundary. So here's the thing though. I often see it where people spend time saying, I'm setting a boundary. I'm not going to talk to them anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. And in the spirit of health, I tell people, Sometimes we use the excuse of setting boundaries to evade conflict. We want to avoid conflict. We're all conflict averse to some degree, but it's important to make sure that we're okay with having the hard conversations, knowing that it doesn't have to be an argument. It can just simply be a conversation. You're having the conversation because you value the nature of the relationship, or you're having the conversation because though I don't give two craps about you because you're not a good person, I value my peace. And so I need to have this conversation and set this boundary in place so I can do that. But what I have been taught through my healing journey in the last 2 years is that, girl, you need to set some boundaries with yourself. So a few years ago, Shonda Rhimes wrote this phenomenal book called The Year of Yes. And I was like, oh, that's good. Shonda's saying yes to all these different things. And Spirit told me, but you need to learn how to say no. Even as advocates, sometimes when we're boots to the ground and we do what we do and we grind, we run, we burn ourselves out because we're doing too much. And we really do have to prioritize taking care of ourselves in a different kind of way so that we can even be more effective in our calling and who we're meant to be, who we're meant to serve. So that's why practicing self-care in the form of boundaries with ourselves means if you said you're going to take some downtime for a particular period of time, or you're not going to participate in an activity or something a particular weekend, honor that so that you can embrace rest as normal. Normalize taking care of you by doing nothing. This is grind culture. We live in a very capitalistic society, as everyone knows. And so often we find ourselves confusing the concept of moving with and being busy as being productive. And it's even harder when you're doing work like what we do, right? Supporting real causes that matter. Like we know this is of value, but even with us, we have to set boundaries with ourselves first so that we can make sure that we are honoring what our mind, body, and spirit needs first, because it'll ultimately make us more effective advocates. Now I'm talking to y'all, but I'm talking to me too, okay? So no judgment whatsoever. And the last thing that I want to make sure that I highlight is uh, honor the spectrum. And I should have probably put spectrum since I'm neurodivergent. But honor the spectrum. One of the things that I also say is that it's never black and white, it's always gray. But for the sake of Pride Month, I'll say it's never black and white, it's always a rainbow. Like it really is. People try to put stuff in boxes, which often causes us to put ourselves in boxes. And so when you're talking about people that are, I don't live with a rare disease, but I do live with an autoimmune condition, chronic illness called Hashimoto's. And, dismissed in the doctor's office, took 5 years to get a diagnosis, all these different things. And I work in healthcare. I'm a health advocate that knows how to demand certain things for myself and still struggled. And so, whether it's you having a conversation with your provider, or you sitting down and having a talk, or writing a letter, or journaling to your partner, a family member, a friend, a loved one, make sure that you are operating in a space where you can kind of always have a certain level of patience to consider their understanding of things. People really do operate in a place of existential crisis where until it knocks on their front door, they're like, oh, I don't have to even think about that. I saw this often, still see it often, like operating in HIV, people still not understanding what PrEP is, still saying like, well, what do you mean rare disease? It's really like until it knocks on your front door, we don't get it. But in the big scheme of things, it's going to be important for us to just honor the spectrum by understanding that people have different lived experiences, different learning styles, that everybody's not trying to be a butthole, but there are a lot of buttholes out there. There are a lot of jerks out there. And so it's really just having conversations with people in the spirit of advocacy. I often have to like I want to go off when people say disrespectful or dismissive things about our community, because it's from a place of fear, it's from a place of ignorance. just from a place of a lack of awareness because people don't know. They just often go by what they're told. But if I want them to shift, not that I'm trying to change their mind, if I want them to consider differently, it requires me to go somewhere and take a breath, come back and say, okay, let me try to explain this to them because I'm tired of people with the whole why are your pronouns she they. I'm tired of the whole LGBTQ, why is it another letter or numbers to it? Like people asking questions in a very like dismissive way where they don't necessarily care or understand to learn. But the important part is that um, honor the spectrum by saying, let me consider that maybe they really don't know because maybe they don't have a queer loved one that they embrace in their families. I often have people that tell me, even in ministry, they'll say, oh, I don't know anybody queer. I say, no, you absolutely know somebody queer. You absolutely know somebody probably living with a rare disease. You absolutely know somebody living with HIV. Let me help you. You're not a safe space, so they haven't disclosed or shared with you. So reflect on that. And so in that same regard for us as advocates and just people living in this world, I often have to remind myself to, okay, don't go off this time. Just take a breath so that you can have a conversation with them in hopes that it will cause them to at least think and reflect on it so that they can operate differently next time they have a conversation with somebody. Now, that's not every person I encounter for sure, because that's not that I may not have the bandwidth for it that day, and that's okay. And then that person may not be receptive, and that's okay too. But to Paul's point earlier, to Katrina's point earlier, we all can speak up, modify, shift our platforms, our stories, how we share, what we share, and with whom we share based on where we are. But if you live authentically and just speak from your story, it will, I guarantee you, it will impact somebody's life. It will change someone's life. It may save someone from dying by suicide. You just never know. And so I really am honored to be in this space. I encourage each and every one of you to just continue to take care of yourselves, continue to speak your truth, to speak through the silence, because what you say really does matter because every single voice matters, whether it's about your health, whether it's about your romantic relationships, your life, who you're becoming, who you want to be. There's no dream that you're too old for. Pick all of those up and say, okay, what do I do now to get started at so and so age? All of those boxes, just like people try to box us in as a community, are in our mind. So you're never too young. Nate is evidence of that, right? You're never too old. I'm probably evidence of that, right? Like all these different things. So take care of yourselves. I hope this has been helpful. Like I said, I'm super honored to be here and I'm looking forward to hearing the other speakers. And I'll take some questions now if anybody has any.
Yeah, that was amazing, Jocelyn. Um, yeah, I'm so happy that one, was able to create a platform for you to speak, and also that you were able to be here. It all worked out. And I think that was it was meant to be. So I appreciate that. And
Absolutely.
you were just spitting straight facts. That's all I
Yeah.
could say. Straight facts. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Shout out to the zebras. I forgot to that too, but I'm seeing some zebra stripes in this chat. Love the fits. Okay. So any questions for Jocelyn? I just wanted to give her tens real quick.
I love that Katrina's saying age ain't nothing but a number. It does take us a long time to figure that out.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that, Jocelyn. I, I mean, every word you were saying, it was just like, yes, yes.
Thank you, Katrina. Yeah, it's just lessons learned. Lessons learned.
Yeah. And I will say, I think Courtney, did you were the talking about being a young person in this space.
Yes.
Never, I have always regarded my sexuality as something to be hidden. And I have given a lot of so many parts of me to help people, but never in my life had I actually considered that the life that I was living and the love that I had for my partner would be something that would inspire anybody else. I mean, I'm just, what did they say? You're today years old when you realize that what what just this life could have been or can be, I guess, an inspiration to others. I just never thought of it that way. Just was something that we hid, that we were afraid, to share publicly.
And I just wanted to say, Jocelyn, I really love how you talked about, you included the self-care aspect, and the perspective of, you said something to the extent of sometimes that's used as an excuse to avoid conflict. And I can relate to that. I can very much relate to that myself. Personally, I've had some challenges after my rare disease journey with reintroducing myself into society as a 20 something queer. And figuring out, okay, how do I make friends? How does one how does one function and make friends in life after being used to sitting in a hospital bed for years? So it was like having to reincorporate that. And I think for a minute that was until I learned how to be a human again. I was doing that. I was like, I can't really be bothered. There's just some things I was avoiding. Um,
Sure. Give yourself grace, though. We all do it sometimes. Right?
I just really appreciate you for mentioning that because I haven't really sat to think about that. So that was really great.
Yeah, I deal with it every day because when you've lived through so much trauma, so many of us that work in this space called advocacy, whether it's your personal lived experience or who you're advocating for, but we've all been through our own things. You're whether it's medical trauma or whatever, you're dealing with a bunch of stuff so that people that are supposed to be refuges or you feel like safe spaces, they start creating other drama unnecessarily. The volume goes down real low on the radio. It's like, oh, I don't really have any tolerance for that right now because I've been through X, Y, and Z. And so that's often why we sit in those spaces. But um it's okay to do it sometimes because that might be what we need in the moment. Like it's not a bad thing. It's just that it's important that we not create a pattern of behavior behind it where we're doing it all the time to avoid conflict because we might find ourselves missing out on people that should be a beautiful part of our chosen family or village.
Exactly. And for the record, I consider all of you part of my chosen village. If that's not clear already. Um, if anybody else has something they would like to ask Jocelyn, they can. Otherwise, we are a little ahead of schedule and probably can have a little longer of a break. Thanks to Courtney again for being like, put breaks in there. People need to rest. So, yeah,
I
well,
just, if I could like
go
really
ahead.
quick, because I'm gonna have to go, so I didn't want to leave without saying goodbye. But I also was wondering if, Jocelyn, can you say what you said earlier again? Something about like every person, every type, every time, or some, what was that? It was like a nugget of wisdom.
Yes, I said for me, health equity means every identity, every story, every single time.
Identity, story, every time. Love it. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
And I consider you guys all part of my chosen family too. Really, really glad for this event and for all of you. Thank you.